Hi, Chris. I'm doing the A option, obviously. um, so I'm just gonna jump right into the different views. Starting with Kate Bowler. She, her, I read her book, in block, so it wasn't like a new idea to me when I watched the video and read the article. But she I'm not gonna go over the story again. But there's a few quotes that I have that kind of explain what she's saying. A lot of people, once she wrote the article, sent her things saying this must have happened for a reason. Something's going on here. Maybe you did something bad, like the Job thing. But she was like, no, I didn't do anything wrong. And there's no reason for this. So yeah, the people wanted to know that there was a hidden logic to the seeming chaos. That's a quote from her. There's another one that kind of explains what happened when she realized that she was about to die and when she was in the hospital. When I was sure I was going to die, I didn't feel angry. I felt loved. It was one of the most surreal things I've experienced. In a time in which I should have felt abandoned by God, I was not reduced to ashes. I felt like I was floating. My own suffering began to feel like it revealed the suffering of others. So not that there's a purpose for pain, because I don't think that she thinks that there is a purpose. But that is a result of pain. And another quote from her, I believe that in the darkness, even there will be beauty and there will be love. So again, I don't think that she really believes that there is a purpose for pain. But she thinks that things can result out of pain. And the world is full of pain, but it's also full of beautiful things. And just because pain is there doesn't mean that beautiful things can't be there. Another quote from her, I see that the world is jolted by events that are wonderful and terrible, gorgeous and tragic. I can't reconcile the contradiction, except that I am beginning to believe that these opposites do not cancel each other out. Life is so beautiful and life is so hard. So that one's pretty self-explanatory. That quote pretty much sums up exactly what she believes. So yeah, in just kind of an overview of what her thoughts are, is that pain happens. It doesn't seem like there's a purpose for pain, but she does think that just because pain exists doesn't mean that beauty can't exist, and beauty sometimes is a result of pain. So I'm going to move on to the next person, which is David Bentley Hart. He starts off talking a little bit about he wrote this article in response to like an event happening in the Philippines, I think. And he writes a little bit about Ivan's Rebellion, the chapter, and Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov, saying that he kind of sort of agrees with Ivan, but kind of comes to a different conclusion than him. And I have a few quotes from him. His view essentially is that we can't really know why pain exists. And that's the best thing that we can do, because if we think that pain happens for a reason, then that would be putting God into a causer of pain, and Hart doesn't want to accept that, and neither does Ivan. So again, a few quotes. But Ivan's Rebellion is something altogether different. Voltaire sees only the terrible truth that the actual history of suffering and death is not morally intelligible. Dostoevsky sees, and this bespeaks both his moral genius and his Christian view of reality, that it would be far more terrible if it were. So, yeah, we aren't able to tell why God makes stuff like this happen, why he makes the tornado, the hurricanes hitting Haiti happen. We aren't able to tell that. And if we were able to tell that, I don't know if that would be better. And Dostoevsky and Hart both agree that it seems like it would be worse. He goes on a little bit and talks a little bit more about that view. And another quote, "For while Christ takes the suffering of his creatures up into his own, it is not because he or they had need of suffering, but because he would not abandon his creatures to the grave. And while we know that the victory over evil and death has been won, we know also that it is a victory yet to come, and that creation, therefore, as Paul says, groans in expectation of the glory that will one day be revealed. Until then, the world remains a place of struggle between light and darkness, truth and falsehood, life and death, and in such a world, our portion is charity. So, there's a different quote. I didn't write it down, but he talks about the Christianity is a religion that's focused on salvation, and there's no reason that we shouldn't hate pain. There's nothing in the Bible that says that pain is like a good thing to happen. And Hart says that we should hate pain because it's not good, but eventually pain will be over. And sorry about that. My phone ran out of storage. So I think that I finished up Hart. I'm not really sure where I ended it, but I'll talk about it later. I'm gonna move to C.S. Lewis now. Essentially, the entirety of his argument is that it brings us closer to God. Along with this, he thinks that, quote, if God is wiser than we, his judgments must differ from ours on many things, and not least on good and evil. What seems to us good may not be good, therefore not be good in his eyes, and what seems to us to be evil may not be evil. That's the end of the quote. Even though this is the real thought, like what he really believes, he still kind of tries to come up with an explanation. He starts by introducing the idea of intrinsically impossible things, something that just can't happen logically, like the Christian God sending. Another quote, the absolutely impossible may also be called the intrinsically impossible because it carries its impossibility within itself. It is impossible under all conditions in all worlds and for all agents. All agents here includes God himself. His omnipotence means power to do all that is intrinsically possible, not to do the intrinsically impossible. So God can't sin. Obviously, if you're a Christian, you believe that. So if God can't do wrong, then he can't purposefully harm humans. This doesn't really solve the problem of evil, though, does it? So inner humanity. Humans are terrible. They do bad stuff. They rebel against God. God has to do something because he's a moral God, and he believes that, and he's set up these laws. So he uses pain to push people towards him. He uses pain as a megaphone. That's the main comparison that Lewis uses. He's not happy with this, saying that no doubt pain is, as God's megaphone, is a terrible instrument. It may lead to final and unrepented rebellion, but it gives the only opportunity the bad man can have for amendment. So along with this, pain brings us to God. It sucks, but it still brings us to him. Look at what Bowler says. She kind of says in her video that it kind of brought her a little bit closer to God, which is weird because it seems like she should hate God. Lewis says this: if the first and lowest operation of pain shatters the illusion that all is well, the second shatters the illusion that we have, whether good or bad in itself, is our own and enough for us. Everyone has noticed how hard it is to turn our thoughts to God when everything is going well with us. So the second operation of pain brings us to God by showing that we really aren't self-sufficient, and we do need God. So, yeah, that one's pretty self-explanatory. Marcus Aurelius is much easier to explain. He believes that there's something called the ether, which is outside of the world. You can call it a deity, you can call it whatever, but he calls it the fiery ether. And the ether essentially just determines what happens in our world. And it's a very deterministic view of the world. The only way that you can truly be free is to have like a vivid mental life, which I love Marcus Aurelius, but I'm not sure if I buy this. The global issues, stuff that my body does, that's all caused by the ether. So yeah, the only way that we can have freedom is through our mental state. And the problem of evil isn't really a problem because it's all caused by the ether. Obviously the ether isn't like a Christian God or anything, so it doesn't need to be good. So the problem of evil just doesn't really apply to Marcus Aurelius as much as the other ones. So now I'm going to move on to the third section of the argument. The video. So a few of the writers agree on stuff, but a few also disagree. Marcus Aurelius obviously is in his own corner. He's just doing his own thing. While the other three are kind of in the general area of each other. Ballard kind of seems to agree with C.S. Lewis's premise, that we don't really know why God allows pain. But I'm not sure if she'd agree with his discussion on the point of pain, bringing it closer to God. To her, it just doesn't really seem like pain has a purpose. Pain is pain, and that's all that it is. Bentley Hart, again, kind of seems in the middle. He seems to agree with C.S. Lewis's initial premise as well, but argues that the best way for us to look at pain is with hatred. Pain is bad, and yes, Jesus defeated pain in the grave, but the results have yet to really show up. The quote by Dostoevsky that he uses is the best illustrator of his point. To quote him, "We aren't allowed to look on the devastation visited upon the coast of the Indian Ocean and to console ourselves with vacuous cant about the mysterious course taken by God's goodness in this world, or to assure others that some ultimate meaning or purpose resides in so much misery." Bentley Hart and Ballard seem to be in agreement there. Pain doesn't really seem to have a purpose, at least not visible to us. It's just bad. So, personally, I'm kind of in the middle of C.S. Lewis and Kate Ballard. Stuff happens, and pain happens, and it sucks. But in the end, we really can't do very much about it. Pain is bad, but sometimes from pain comes good things, which is what Ballard thinks, and sort of C.S. Lewis, but a little different. I disagree with Marcus Aurelius entirely just because of his worldview. As deterministic as it is, the idea of your mental state being how you're free just kind of seems like a false sense of freedom to me. Bentley Hart is similar to C.S. Lewis, but goes into much less detail on it. C.S. Lewis's solution I'm more prone to agree with just because I love his view of hell, and his solution to the problem of pain works very well with his concept of hell. Bentley Hart is sort of saying something similar to Ballard, but a little more pessimistic, so I think that I would choose Ballard over him. All in all, the problem of pain is exactly what it sounds like. It's a problem, and I don't think that we'll ever really truly be able to figure it out. I'm content that believing that pain is bad and potentially could have no purpose. But if it were to have a purpose, I would like for it to be used in the way that C.S. Lewis explains. So, see ya.